Professor Singh, what is the big picture?
I think very clearly, I agree with Ambassador Stobden. China is seen as a leading light in Shanghai Cooperation Organization. But being a leading light or being a host, it has clearly failed to sustain the credibility of that organization because SCO works on consensus basis. And if the host country and so-called leader of SCO has not been able to produce a consensus document, it reflects both on the organization and the host country. That is my first point. Second, as far as Ambassador Stobden mentioned about India should not be in SCO, I think I am at disagreement on that. India has been the leading voice on dealing with issues of terrorism, both at the regional level, 1987 Anti-Terror Convention that was signed by SARC, South Asian Association for Regional Organization, and from 1994 at United Nations, India has been a leading player trying to build a global countering terrorism convention. So in that sense, India is a leading voice on counterterrorism. And if Shanghai Cooperation Organization that was set up in 2001 to deal with issues of terrorism, in fact, in Uzbekistan, they had set up a anti-terror structures called RATS, which fundamentally works on issues of terrorism. I think India fully deserves to be there. But the fact that, in a very, very myopic preoccupation with Pakistan, a mention of Balochistan, where on 10th of May, a terror attack took place and I think 3 children died, was made, but no mention of Pahalgam, which led to 26 people being, first of all, identified in terms of their religious leanings and then killed, and that leading to a military confrontation between 2 member states of Shanghai Cooperation Organization. Is not mentioned. I mean, this is really strange to see that kind of a document coming out of Shanghai Cooperation Organization meeting hosted in China, which shows that China has become virtually blind by its friendship with Pakistan and
Absolutely.
is not worried about the credibility of organization. Forget about its relationship with the second most important country in SCO today, which is India, the 4th largest economy,
Absolutely.
largest neighbor in terms of the population, largest democracy, and so on. And fundamentally, therefore, to me, it's more than India-China relations, it's China's failure to ensure credibility of Shanghai Cooperation Organization by presenting a picture which should be acceptable to all the member
Absolutely.
states. And I think it's a failure of the host country.
But there is also one. Professor Swing, the question is that over a period of time, the stand of China diplomatically, militarily, has hardened towards India. Is there any scope that both countries can have normal relationship, or do you think that the China has taken a position which is anti-India?
Karthikeya, I think you made a very brilliant point here because this was the first visit of India's defense minister after 2020. China should have utilized this important opportunity to streamline a lot of things between India and China. And defense ministers are usually the last ones to visit each other when there are tensions. You could have foreign ministers visiting first time, education and sports ministers visiting there. China in that sense should have used this opportunity of Rajnath Singh, India's defense minister, being in Beijing to sort out many other issues which would have accelerated the building of peace on the borders between India and China. But obviously, as I'm saying, that China apparently seems to be in this case blinded by its friendship with Pakistan. And it looks like some of the sections were dictated by Pakistan as to what should be mentioned and what should not be mentioned. It will surprise any observer from any part of the planet to see this joint statement coming soon after a military confrontation between India and Pakistan that was triggered by attack in Pahalgam, not making mention even indirectly of that, and then particularly making mention of Balochistan. So I think it's a clear failure of China as a leader of SCO, as a host of SCO meeting of defense ministers. And India has stood firm that terrorism is something that India will not tolerate. And I think recently the Indian Prime Minister clarified India's approach to issues of terrorism as to how India will deal with these things without even worrying about nuclear blackmail and so on. And therefore, I think initially the terrorism, if it sustains and continues to threaten a country's national security, will have to be dealt militarily. But I understand ultimately it will have to be dealt in terms of diplomatic dialogue. But it takes two sides to do that dialogue. I mean, if one side is really not willing to strike a conversation or create an environment for talks, then one country cannot unilaterally start a kind of a conversation without appropriate environment being built for.
I think you have made a
that
very
kind of
important point, sir.
dialogue.
In fact, the Prime Minister has gone out and, either you can quote Wuhan Conversation Summit or Mamallapuram. I think Prime Minister went out of his way to accommodate Xi Jinping, even the one-to-one summit in Ahmedabad. But I don't think it fructified because the Chinese intention was clear that their position is not going to change.
Is that question to me, Karthik?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Indeed, I think that is what is significant to understand, that Chinese heart of heart at their subconscious level see India as a competitor, and I think that makes them very uncomfortable in dealing with India, in building some kind of dialogue which is proactive and positive. And that sense of India being seen as a competitor also makes them really very, very concerned when India is welcomed in Southeast Asia by ASEAN countries, or welcomed in the Indo-Pacific framework, or befriended by countries like United States and various European countries. That is invariably interpreted in Beijing as anti-Beijing, which is not how it is. India keeps repeatedly underlining India's engagement with Western multilateral organizations is neither anti-Western nor anti-China. When India joins BRICS, India joins SCO, it's not anti-Western nations. When India joins the Indo-Pacific framework, it's not anti-China. India's multilateralism is guided by multi-alignment, where India seeks to build positive economic partnerships in as many sectors with as many countries as possible, with focus on Viksit Bharat. And therefore, we don't hold any relationship hostage to any other country in that sense. And that is clarified ad nauseum at all levels by India. But Chinese somehow continue to be suspect of India's credentials,
yes,
as far as anti-China policies
Ambassador,
are concerned. And that makes them miss several opportunities to engage India in a very proactive and
so Ambassador, my question to